Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Camille's Harem. Lars and Scott here to talk about probably one of the best manga finds that we have had this year. And Scott, how about you take it away, so that way I don't butcher this lovely manga's name.
I mean, it's a very pretty name. So, the name of it in Japanese is Kaoru Hana wa Rin to Saku by Mikami Saka, which is the name of the author. Loosely translated, the name ends up becoming The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity. And if after hearing that you're thinking it's going to be kind of a shoujo-based story, it is a shoujo-based story. But we love it anyway.
Shoujo.
It's so good. Though the site I'm looking on right now is really saying it's shonen, but I think that's a mistake.
We were talking about this earlier. I said the only characters in this who even match a shonen description are the three friends to the male lead, Rintaro. They have shonen personalities.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's really almost no shonen in this story. It's way more shoujo.
Beautiful story. All of these characters are precious, especially the main two, Rintaro and Kaoru.
They are so good. And to kind of set the stage for understanding this story right here, this is basically a take on Romeo and Juliet. And so already right here, you then realize, this is a romance story. It's going to be about young love, and there's going to be two warring factions that make the lives of these two lovebirds really annoying and possibly even impossible, depending on where the story goes. But as opposed to Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, where you're like, wait a second, isn't Juliet the rebound girl for Romeo because he just broke it off with another girl? As opposed to that kind of awkwardness... You know it's true. As opposed to that kind of awkwardness right here, Rintaro and Kaoru, when they meet, it is in a way that is just absolutely endearing because it is so painfully and hilariously realistic. Right. Basically what happens is that for one of the characters, it's love at first sight, but you don't get to choose when you have met the person that you love. And sometimes it's in a really, not exactly a really embarrassing situation, but in this case, it's not necessarily the quote unquote optimal situation. And the girl is just it's great. It's so great. I love the first chapter because it's just, it felt like stepping back into high school, but without the sweatiness and the hormones.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what it did end up feeling like. You've got the two main characters. You've got Rintaro, who goes to this boys' school, which you can tell probably not the best boys' school, but it's not a bad school in its own right. Just a bunch of the people are kind of rowdy, as you can get from a lot of the characters. And then you've got Kaoru, who she goes to this really preppy, all-girls school. And the schools are right next door, and there's some tension between these schools. And so that's where you're getting a lot of this Romeo and Juliet kind of situation from, because it's not coming from the parents, at least from what we've seen of Rintaro's parents. We haven't seen Kaoru's parents at all, but from what we've seen of Rintaro's parents, they are great people, and you can kind of see how Rintaro became such a good person because of that.
Yeah, and this is something that I already want to kind of dive into, why I personally love this story so much is not just because it's a very wholesome romance, but because the characters are so well done. And like I said, for me, it was like stepping back into high school because there were moments that I could personally identify with, and there were also moments where I'm like, I remember seeing that as well. And so for instance, with Rintaro's character, Rintaro is a really tall, really athletic built kind of kid. He himself is not super athletic. He doesn't go out of his way to make his body all swole and super toned and whatnot. He's just naturally physically tall and athletic. And because he's so tall, athletic, and he's dyed his hair blonde, he sticks out like a sore thumb. He looks like he's a bruiser. He looks like a troublemaker. And so almost everyone keeps him at arm's length. They don't want to associate him. It's the whole thing in Japan. If you stick out like a nail, you get hammered. And so because Rintaro just sticks out literally and figuratively, definitively, Japanese society has not been kind to him. And so as a result, like, he is depressed. He feels very isolated from the rest of the world, even though he has a very loving family and he has friends who really care for him. Because of how society has treated him for so long, he has a hard time seeing all of that. So he has been raised to be a good kid. He at heart is a good kid, but society has made him believe that he's actually someone else. And what it takes is it takes a character like Karuko who comes into his life and helps him to realize who he actually is and gives him opportunities to actually be who he honestly is at heart. That is amazing because we get to see a healing for this main character that I don't think you see very often, and it's done in a very tasteful, realistic way that feels absolutely earned, and it just helps to heighten the level of romance, at least on Rintaro's side of the scale.
Right, and I really wish we'd get more on Karuko's side. We're starting to get more in the manga, but it's just not quite as prevalent as Rintaro's side, but she's quite the character.
I mean, where we are right now in the manga,
I
was gonna say, right now where we are in the manga is definitely like switching track. We've been with Rintaro now for so long, and now it feels like the manga is shifting a bit to now give us Karuko's side of the story, and that's gonna be really cool.
That is gonna be really cool, because as their love story is playing out, as they're falling in love, it's just endearing the characters more and more, because you've got Rintaro, who is starting to become a better person because of Karuko, and you're seeing the influence that Rintaro is having on Karuko as well, especially through how Rintaro's actually been able to help a friend of Karuko's, how Hoshina has, which honestly Hoshina's one of my favorite characters in this. I mean, kind of after Rintaro and Karuko, because those two are outright precious, but Hoshina, she ends up like starting out, she's super nervous, she's super shy, she has some trauma in her past that has her, she has a fear of men, of boys, and I imagine for quite a lot of people in this day and age that's very relatable, and just seeing her be able to come to terms with that fear when it comes to Rintaro and his friends, and her be able to realize, okay, not everybody's gonna be like this, and I've got my friend to support me, I can actually be friends with these people, and them being great people. Seeing those friendships growing, and I think Karuko and Hoshina have one of the best girl friendships out there. And we need to see more of that in fiction. We've talked about that before on Camille's Harem, but the one here with Karuko and Hoshina, they're constantly supporting each other. They're constantly there for each other, and it's wholesome to see. It really is wholesome to see.
Yeah, it's really great. Like, especially the showdown between Hoshina and Rintaro, which is like a very climactic point early on in the manga, and is like one of those really like big moments to show that the rivalry between the two schools is very hostile. It's not just a rivalry where like they glare at each other from across the courtyard, but like there's bad things that can happen to students if these students interact too much with each other. And so like Hoshina's like, my friend Karuko's life, and especially her education, her prospects for education could be destroyed by associating with you, because she is a self-made girl. She earned her place in this school. She wasn't given it because her family comes from some rich, influential background. She earned her place here. If the school for any reason believes that her relationship with you could tarnish its reputation, they will cut her immediately out of the program. And that would absolutely be devastating to her, to me, to her family, and to all the other friends that she has. So if you care about her, you're not going to see her again. And I love Rintaro's like response. He says, I'm sorry, I understand, and I know this is selfish of me to say it, but I just want to see her again, because he's beginning to fall for her. And it's like, I love that moment right there, because how many anime actually has the protagonist respond that way? How many other stories in anime or manga where the main protagonist is like, oh my gosh, you're right, I've done something wrong, and then they turn away and you're left for like 2 or 3 chapters wondering, oh, what will happen next? And of course they're going to get back together. Like, no! Rintaro's all like, yeah, screw that. And which, I mean, puts him and Hoshina kind of at loggerheads, but it's good because it then forces these two to communicate. And that communication is so necessary.
Yeah, it's such a cute story. And like all of this build up to their relationship getting stronger and like all the precious relationship they have with their friends. I love how they're building this all up. They're building everything up. So when some of the real fireworks that we can see on the horizon start happening, we'll really see how strong those bonds are at that point, because you can feel that tension building up in the background this entire time. And even though I really don't want these precious characters to suffer, it's going to be a treat seeing how they handle all of that.
And the manga has already done a fantastic job of setting up how things can be potentially resolved in the future.
Yeah.
And a lot of it does come down to the relationships that our two main characters form with other people. Like, there's a part that's kind of midway through the manga, at least as far as the manga is right now, where certain events in the first few chapters really finally come back to bite Rintaro in the rear. It's a situation where you're like, something bad is about to happen, and there's no way you can talk your way out of this. There's no way you can fight your way out of this, and it looks like things are about to go really, really bad, and then the buddies show up. The buddies who just had like a fantastic chapter of their own now come on in, and they're just all like, yeah, none of that. And they step in to help save the day. It's so well done. First time I read that, and when I reread it again, I was just grinning ear to ear, because it's like, that is an absolute bro moment. Like, you don't get that very often, where you're like, that is what real friends would do in that kind of a situation.
Right.
How they bite the bullet for their best friend. They're like, don't worry, man, we got this. We're going to take care of it. And I love Rintaro's parents.
Yes,
I freaking love them.
They're such good parents.
They're so good. I love his mom. I mean, this is slight spoilers right here. Things that happen later on that, like, there's going to be a reveal. They are like, oh. When you get to that reveal, you have to go back and reread the manga. Because it changes everything. You still get the precious story, but there's other layers and other elements that come on out there, and you begin to realize that the mom is the VIP of the entire story, because she is freaking amazing. She's like, I see what's going on here, and I'm going to let my son figure stuff out, but if he's a knucklehead, I'm going to steer him where he needs to be, so that way he can make the decisions that he needs to make. But otherwise, I'm going to let him be, because I'm a good mom like that. And I'm like, that's respect. And also, I mean, to me, she's super hot, so there's that as well.
there is that as well, though I wouldn't want to contend with her husband, the dad, because he's not somebody I want to get on the bad side of, for sure.
No, he may seem like a gentle giant, but there's a reason why Rintaro is physically as big as he is.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The characters is just absolutely great. And the way that the Romeo and Juliet style story plays out is just really, really good. Because Romeo and Juliet seems to kind of get a bad rap, because everyone knows that it's kind of a silly premise, especially because we know it ends with the main characters killing themselves, and it's all tragic and whatnot. You don't get the sense of tragedy in this story. If anything, it feels like the tragedy has already happened, and we don't yet know what it was, and that the characters are coming out of that tragedy. And part of that is romance that helps save them, and part of that is friendship that saves them as well. And that's that's why it's so wholesome.
Well, and I feel like a lot of the mistake a lot of people make when they try to make their own Romeo and Juliet-esque story is they don't take the time to establish that relationship before they get into the traumatic fireworks, the conflict, the climax of the story, where you finally got like the parents fighting against each other over this whole relationship that started. You don't have their relationship set before that kind of stuff starts. And I love how this manga is actually taking the time to do that. We can see it coming from miles away. Yeah, we know that's going to happen. But that's not what matters right at the beginning. You need to establish that relationship so that when that stuff happens, you actually know the reasons why these characters are making their decisions relationship-wise when it comes to that point.
It pays off absolutely beautifully later on. Like, there are some real romantic payoffs that, like, again, it's so good. Because the shoujo that I've seen a lot of it is just like blushing, some tears, the lewd hand holding. Oh my. For how the relationship develops and how it's revealed and whatnot. Kaoru Hana is very intelligent. It reveals the development of the romance through action and words. Right. Like, there's plenty of blushing, there's happy crying and whatnot, but those right there are more like the things that happen after, like, the real meat of any sort of reveal or discovery or romantic progress is actually already had. I want to kind of, like, give an example, but I'm like, no, because that would be a spoiler for just such a precious moment.
Yeah, let the readers experience it all for themselves. It's just another one that we highly recommend.
Yeah, I definitely feel like when we get around to, like, Valentine's Day, this is when I kind of want to come back to and revisit, because it'll obviously have moved. It'll have progressed a little bit more from that point, and we'll see what's going on there. And there's other potential romances that are kind of beginning to get teased on the side. The main one is obviously Rintaro and Karuko coming closer together. It's just, it's so good. And just the character design. This is why I want to see it animated, is I want to see, here's the thing. Take the budget that's being given to Rent a Girlfriend and dump it into this.
Yeah.
Because I want to see Karuko animated. Because, like, if you think that Mizuhara has a great fashion sense, you haven't seen Karuko yet. She dolls herself up every single day, and it is fantastic. It's also fantastic when you begin to, like, know a little bit more about why she does what she does and what she actually looks like when she doesn't, which is, like, super cool and just, like, gives a neat little bit of depth to her character as well. And it's just also beautiful character design.
But yeah, we highly recommend this.
So yeah, definitely go check out Kaoru Hana. We'll have a link for it, so that way you can, in the description below, so that way you can go and you can check it out on your own. Take your time with this manga. It is fantastic. But we also encourage you to check out the other links that we have in the description, where you can check out our Pinterest page, where we've got challenges and writing exercises for all you novice authors out there. You can also check out some of the books that we've written and published. Oh yeah. And we also have links to some of our other sites as well, where you can interact with us. And of course, you can interact with us in the comment section below. We would love to hear your thoughts about some of the romance stories that you've come across that you think are really good. Or after you've checked out this particular manga, what are your thoughts on the main characters and their romantic progression? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
We really would.
So I think that will wrap it up then for this particular video. Thank you for joining us in this adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.